be alright. This is your night tonight. Everything's gonna be alright.
What is going on today, TNA folks, man? This is your boy Tae.
It's your boy Ant.
We're Tae N Ant, and we are back at it with another reaction video. What are we going to be reacting to today, Ant?
Today, we're going to be reacting to the Complete Pixar Theory. Essentially what this video is explaining how all Pixar movies culminate and connect in somehow. Not just with Easter eggs, but they're all sharing the same universe.
Whoever saw the rants video, man, y'all already know we was gonna be bad.
Yeah. Now I'm gonna be real transparent. I seen this when I was like maybe like middle school, man. So I don't remember much from it, but Tay hasn't seen it at all. So we're gonna get him hip to it. We're gonna refresh my memory to it. We're gonna have a good time. Oh my gosh. Let's get to it.
Hey brother! Ben, way back in 2012, we made a video called The Pixar Theory, and it would change our lives and this channel forever. Since then, anytime a new Pixar movie has come out, we've made a full video explaining how it fits into the greater Pixar universe. But it's been 6 years since then, and it's getting a little hard to keep track of everything. So today, we're simplifying things and making a new, updated Pixar theory, covering everything from Toy Story through The Incredibles 2. This is the Pixar Theory. Now, if you love Pixar movies as much as we do, you know that Pixar loves to leave Easter eggs in each of their movies as little nods to their other projects. But what if they weren't just little nods? What if instead they were clues? Clues that every movie actually takes place in the same universe. That is the Pixar theory. The idea that every Pixar movie is actually taking place on one giant timeline and telling one huge story. And as ever, I want to point out up front that we did not invent the Pixar theory. It was introduced to the world by a man named John Negroni, who has even written a book about it now. And since then, of course, the internet has gone crazy with it, and there are tons of different versions and interpretations of the Pixar out there, but what you're going to hear today is simply our version, what we have come to accept as canon for the Pixar universe here at Super Carlin Brothers. Let's begin. Now, it is a lot to cover, so we're going to go about it in two ways. First, we're going to tell the entire story of the Pixar theory, and then we're going to talk about how it works and get to the bottom of why it even exists. Now, the movies don't come out in chronological order. We have to figure that out after the fact, but the first one's pretty easy. It happens way back in time, prehistoric times, with The Good Dinosaur, which immediately offers us an explanation for why the Pixar universe, which is so similar to our very own, is just ever so slightly different, and it's right here when the asteroid that should have wiped out the dinosaurs misses. And as a result, the dinosaurs don't go extinct. We can see some primitive looking dinosaurs see the asteroid miss right here, but then millions of years pass. And we're introduced to a bunch of characters who have evolved out of that primitive state and have started developing things like agriculture and ranching. But as we will soon learn in Brave, the dinosaurs don't have a witch to help them change their fate, and so fate eventually catches up with them in the form of crazy, crazy weather, which wipes them all out. And when the story starts, you can see it's already been happening for a while. I mean, Arlo goes on this grand journey, but he really doesn't run into that many characters. I mean, life is pretty scarce. The pterodactyls used to hunt well, but now have to follow the storm because it's killing everything in its wake. The T-Rexes, which should just be hunting everything, have started ranching things for food. And their herd is so valuable, it's under constant threat of theft by raptors. Even the pet collector, a Strachiosaurus, which typically travels in herds, is now all alone and obviously quite terrified. Terrifying out here. Meanwhile, though, even the smallest of humans is doing well surviving the storms, proving their intelligence and resourcefulness early on. But what the Good Dinosaur really helps us establish here is that if you're the kind of animal that can survive for millions of years without human intervention, like, I don't know, rats or pelicans or anything underwater, you are probably going to develop some kind of intelligence in the Pixar universe. But that's not the only way you might gain intelligence. You also might be a human human who was turned into a giant bear, like in our next movie, Brave. This takes place centuries and centuries later in medieval Scotland, where a young princess is trying to change her fate by not getting married. Which leads her to follow a path of will-o-wisps into the forest, where she meets a very interesting character indeed. A witch. And the witch's workshop is by far the most curious thing about this movie, especially as it relates to the Pixar theory. For one, it introduces us to magic, which is the first example in the Pixar universe of things not behaving the way they're supposed to. Her crow can talk to humans, her door doesn't work the way I've known doors to work, and the witch herself even seems adept at wielding magic, although she's obviously not the source of the magic. For example, all the knives and other various sharp objects in the shop quickly turn on the witch when she's about to refuse Merida's generous offer, suggesting they do have some sort of mind of their own. And we'll dive into that a lot deeper later, but for now, the other important piece of magic we see the witch do is the ability to change someone's fate.
That will change my fate.
And Merida even gives a pretty good description of how fate works. Some say our destiny is tied to the land, as much a part of us as we are of it. Others say fate is woven together like a cloth, so that one's destiny intertwines with many others. It's the one thing we search for or fight to change. Some never find it, but there are some who are led. As it relates to Brave, Merida is just offering us a little bit of foreshadowing about herself. But as it relates to the greater Pixar theory, it is actually giving us a very interesting clue about the witch. So just bear that in mind as we move forward. But so far we've established that humans and animals are both capable of intelligence. But as we get to our next movie, we'll introduce the third player to the game.
That's the only thing I remember, though.
And the power struggle between these three groups, animals, humans, and machines, will pretty much define the middle section of the theory. And I use the word power struggle pretty loosely here, because no one's really ever trying to be in power. It's just that different groups rise into it, often at the cost of the others. And honestly, for the animals, their ship sailed with the dinosaurs. They are never really going to rise back up. For now, let's focus on the introduction of the machines, which happens in The Incredibles, taking place somewhere in the 1950s and 60s. Here we are introduced to the supers, the peak of human existence, who live in a world of constant crime and danger, and who do their best to fight it until one day they're outlawed. But not before Mr. Incredible, the very best of all of them, offends his biggest fan, Buddy Pine, aka Syndrome. He does not take it well and spends the rest of his life developing technology that will help him kill the supers so that he can pretend to be one. Slight hiccup, however, the AI he creates to defeat the supers also turns out to be smart enough to defeat him. And although the Incredibles step in and defeat the armored android and kill Syndrome, the damage has been done. Syndrome has introduced artificial intelligence into the world. And this will mark the end of the humans in terms of power, but it will take quite some time, because the machines won't take control right away. Instead, for the next few movies in the timeline, we're going to see the animals continue to get smarter while the humans remain in the driver's seat. Well, except for that one time Dory drives a truck off a cliff. Next up are the Toy Stories Inside Out, Up, Ratatouille, Finding Nemo, and Finding Dory. Finding Nemo gives us a glimpse back into the world of the animals, and especially undersea, they have been left alone for quite some time, and as a result have developed quite a bit of intelligence. I mean, they have school systems, traffic lights, and a real estate market, I guess.
A lot of other clownfish have their eyes on this place.
You better believe they do.
And not only that, we see a lone fish successfully circumnavigate the ocean to locate his son, and a separate group of fish successfully overpower a human, while another human looks on reading his Incredibles comic book. I mean, obviously he missed out on that one plate on the ground. What are you doing, kid? But not all the animals are out to fend off the humans. Remy the rat in Ratatouille becomes the greatest chef in the world, which is pretty significant because up until that point, cooking was exclusively a human activity. Although to be fair, Remy is sort of the exception to the rule. His father sees humans as the enemy and even names them as such, and he's not wrong. Eventually that's going to be very true. But the information about Remy being a spectacular chef, while mostly kept secret from the public, is known by 4 people at the end of the movie: Colette, Linguini, Anton, and Chef Skinner, who promptly blabs to the press about it. And while most people are obviously grossed out by the rats in the kitchen, a clever person may have noticed that it coincided with renowned critics Anton Ego's stunningly wonderful review of Gusteau's and put 2 and 2 together. So, do we ever see anyone else being served food by animals?
Epsilon is the
Oh, okay,
chef I've
okay,
ever
oh.
had.
Ah, Charles Muntz, the man literally waging war on animals in the Pixar universe, or maybe just a single
Why does he
animal,
have
to be
servants?
more specific.
Okay.
A prehistoric animal, I might add, which per the
never understood
Pixar
that
theory you'd
either.
expect to be extremely intelligent, and indeed, Kevin is, successfully evading capture for 70 plus years. And Kevin's not just evading anyone, she's evading Charles Muntz, a guy clever enough to realize the potential of his dogs and invent collars that
So
let
this is a
them
theory
talk to him. And again, this totally fits.
that
Animals
Charles
like
Muntz
fish
was
or rats or
someone
Kevin's
else
have
from
gone
another
largely
movie, but
ignored by
younger?
humans
I
and
forgot
as
which
such
movie
have
it was.
developed intelligence
I know what you're
naturally,
talking
whereas dogs like Buster we see in Toy Story have not. But Muntz has found the bridge between the two groups, and as a result has like hyper intelligent dogs capable of, as we said, cooking food or I don't know, piloting planes. Man, that was a weird movie sometimes. I guess mostly I don't notice it because I'm watching the movie through so many tears. But Up does introduce some other important aspects of the Pixar theory. Most importantly, BNL, the faceless
That's a very important.
face of the machines. Let me explain. BNL, aka By and
Wall-E,
Large, is the
you know,
company
the
in the
Oh,
beginning of the movie
oh.
forcing Carl to move out of his house. They are the faceless brand, that's the word I was looking for, of the machines on their rise to power. Yes, for now they have physical humans working for them, but I mean, do you think it's any coincidence that this guy looks like an agent from the Matrix?
Coincidence? I think not.
Exactly, Bernie. You get it. And
Nah, he
BNL
was
shows
funny.
up
He
in a
was-
lot.
he didn't
of
deserve- he
movies,
didn't
most
deserve
notably
the-
in WALL-E, which we will
he
get
didn't
to,
deserve
but also
the
in some
treatment
other
in the
places,
movie.
like on the batteries of Buzz in Toy Story, which is not the only connection between Up and Toy Story. You can also see Lotso and the little girl from the daycare in this room right here. Buzz witnesses a grape soda commercial, which happens to have produced the badge Carl wears as the Ellie badge.
Oh,
And then, of course,
okay.
there's the postcard on Andy's bulletin board from the mysterious Emma Jean, who I do not have time to get into right now, but if you want to see the whole video about her, please click the card.
Yeah,
But
that's a
let's
whole
pause on
nother-
Toy Story for a
I
second,
know.
because it's our first great example of how humans are used in the Pixar theory, which is to say, as batteries. How and why the toys are able to come to life and why they fear dying or being forgotten is an interesting question that's been around as long as Toy Story, and which has only really gotten a good answer last year
Or
in Coco.
the love of a
We'll get to that.
child
For now,
or
just
some
know
other
that
crap
humans
like
are
that.
batteries and their energy is required for life in the Pixar universe. Where they are, there is life. Where they are not, there is not. At least when it comes to inorganic things like toys or machines or cars. But when it comes to animals, humans aren't always so great for life. And we see this at the beginning of Finding Dory.
What's they gonna
After
do,
Dory,
Pixar
Marlon, and
clothes,
Nemo arrive
like
in California,
clothes?
they are immediately in the
What's they
middle
gonna
of a
do?
vast underwater
Yeah.
junkyard full of all sorts of trash
Short-
and shipping
like a
containers and a giant
walk-around.
bioluminescent squid, which sadly isn't as
That's
relevant.
scary.
It's super cool, but just not relevant. What is relevant is we start to see a glimpse of what is beginning to happen worldwide. Trash. And even though animals have been on the decline for a while, this is really where they start to drop off, because trash is just not good for animal life. Well, unless maybe you're like, I don't know, rats or something. Which, hey, wouldn't you know, that's the very next movie in the Pixar timeline. It's like they're planning it. But we've already talked about rats. Let's talk about what happens when pollution gets out of control.
You gotta talk
This
about
is the
WALL-E.
setup for WALL-E,
Good
that
call,
the
good
tiny
call.
little city building battery company, by and large, has now become
That is
so big
lazy,
and so
though.
powerful, they have literally taken over the planet and polluted it so bad that humans have to leave while little WALL-E trash compacting robots clean up the mess. So the humans leave for some 700 years, all the animals are dead, and what is left? Cars. Now, you might be thinking, wait, Cars doesn't take place on Earth, right? It's obviously an
Yeah, but
alternate
hold on,
reality
the
or
humans
something.
came back,
Right?
though.
But no, it is
Then
definitely
why?
the
Cars
same
world,
planet
it
Earth
isn't
the
filled
humans
with
were on.
trash.
For one,
Right.
it has all the same places that our planet Earth has, and we get to visit a lot of them in Cars too. But so the question is, why are the cars
I think
coming
we
to
hate Cars
life?
too.
Why are their names so similar to
think we
people we
hate
know
Cars
from
too.
our
Should've
time?
been
Why do they
made
have
to
their
be
own
there.
timeline? Like, if the Cars movies take place during the 700 years that the humans are gone, then how on earth do they have things like the 1950s? I mean, even if they started their own timeline, that's way too many years. Are they still artificial intelligence? Are they products of By and Large? No. BNL's goal is never to create a race that inhabits the planet. Instead, their goal is to control the humans with consumerism and capitalism, and that means treating them as comfy as possible at any cost. I mean, just look at how they're treating everyone on the Axiom. It's an interesting shift from the AI's first encounter with the humans with the Omnidroid. It's like they realize the better way to control them is just to pamper them into death. Hashtag pamper to death. And of course, what the machines get from it is the human energy, which again, we're going to talk about later. Which brings us back to the cars, which aren't coming to life via AI. Instead, it's very similar to the way the toys come to life, or the way the monsters will later fuel their cities, with human energy. It's similar to the toys, but with a few key differences. Obviously, the cars aren't coming to life while the humans are still around, and unlike toys, they are still cars, so they do need fuel to operate. Also, unlike toys, cars are not designed as something to be brought to life by a child's imagination. It's easy for a child to give personality to a cowboy, or a slinky dog, or a walking rearrangeable potato, but it's less obvious for cars, and thus they don't have built-in personalities. So instead, the cars are actually taking on the personalities of their old owners, complete with their memories, but remembered through a carified lens. It would also appear that the cars wake up, if you will, in the same order in which they were cared for, which helps explain why there continues to be new generations of cars as the series progresses. In fact, we even get a hint as to when the real Lightning McQueen must have been alive based on the band-aid this truck driver is wearing in Finding Dory. But the real big important note from Cars 3 that helps draw Cars into the entire Pixar theory is one little line from Cruz when she's driving on the beach.
I didn't want to hit a crab.
I'm sorry, what?
What? It was cute.
Is this an animal that isn't a car in this world? I thought all the animals had died
I remember
off.
the first
there's animal, this car animal.
Yeah, because I remember the first one they had like a car
It's
bug.
perfect.
Yeah, I've seen
Do you remember
car
back in
flies.
Finding Dory, that junkyard scene? Well, guess what happened to be thriving amongst all the
Oh, it's gonna be a car, ain't it?
crabs?
Oh, never
So it should be no
mind.
surprise that
We're
even
just
though the
connecting
humans have
crabs,
vacated
yeah.
the planet, they have survived through the pollution and into the world of cars. Oh, wait, I hear you say. When we start out in WALL-E, the planet is way more polluted than we see in Cars. There's tons of plant life for the Eves to be going down and reporting back with. Agreed, two excellent points, but both are actually pretty easily explained. First of all, the humans may have had to leave way before the planet looks like the way we see it in WALL-E. And second, it's possible that the Eve drones are specifically being sent to areas that have been vastly polluted to see if life has returned and is capable of being lived in again. But really, it doesn't matter, because the AI is determined not to return home. Even if the Earth was 100% clean and the Eve drones were coming back time after time with vegetation, they're just not going back. That's Directive A113.
Right, they weren't
Stop the
supposed to go back.
captains from knowing the Earth is safe. It's possible that in WALL-E, this is not even the first time that this has happened, that Otto has just been intercepting all sorts of plants and sending them off into space. And as for the planet getting as brown as we see at the beginning of WALL-E, well, I think that's what might happen if the only inhabitants of the planet for centuries were nothing but cars. But of course, the cars die off too, because, like we said, without humans, there can't really be life. The cars can survive on fuel alone for a while, but even by Cars 2, there's already an energy crisis.
Right.
But that brings us back to WALL-E, where one superhuman-obsessed little robot finally manages to get a plant delivered to a captain.
I just want to see what percent it was on.
Of the Axiom, and they come skyrocketing back to the planet, and everything is great.
That movie, man.
Mostly. After all, they are still returning to a planet that has been subject to a ton of pollution for a very long time, and it seems to have an interesting effect on the humans over the next few thousand years, which is that they eventually evolve into monsters. Which I know sounds crazy, but actually it's not the first time we've seen a human transform into a monster in the Pixar universe. Jack, anyone? Now, Jack can of course do it on denied cookie demand, but it does reveal that humans have the potential to make this kind of change under the right circumstances. But guess what the monsters are suffering from, guys? Say it with me, an energy crisis. And so what are they having to harvest to run their cities on? Human energy. Or more specifically, human emotions, or even more specifically, human memories. All right, here we go. Finally, we're going to get to how humans work as batteries. And it starts with the scare shortage, which, if you ask me, makes no sense. I mean, we hear all throughout the movies that both Sully and Randall are so close to breaking the all-time scare record. The two best scarers of all time are working at tandem next to each other, and there's a scare shortage?
Kids these days, they just don't get scared like they used to.
Indeed, Water Noose. Indeed. In the movie, the solution to this problem is discovering that laugh energy is 10 times more powerful than scream. But I submit to you that this does not make sense because of the point I just made. If the talent is at an all-time high, why is scream at an all-time low? And the answer is because of how the scare floor works, which is to say, time travel. Stay with me, I promise. It makes sense. When the monsters go through the doors, we see them enter the human world. But as we've established, the human world is their world. They are just accessing a point in history when humans were still around because they need their energy to run their cities. Which means when they travel back in time matters. In Monsters, Inc., in the kids' rooms, we see a lot of posters for the newly opened Tomorrowland, and Boo even has a Jessie doll on the floor of her room, suggesting the time frame is around the 50s or a little after. AKA the time of the supers. And remember, in that time, crime was everywhere, so it would make sense for fear to be high. So the idea is that when time moves forward in the monster world, it also moves forward at the same rate in the human world. They're just traveling parallel to each other. So as times change in the human world, so does what kind of memory is valuable to the monsters. And post-Incredibles, AI is introduced to the world, which starts making things super easy for the humans until again they eventually are being nearly pampered to death. So it makes sense that after AI is introduced, joy and not fear becomes the valuable memory because it is now the dominant memory, which is exactly what we see in Inside Out. By the time Riley comes around, a majority of her memory orbs are joy. There's literally just more for the monster to harvest. And it means memory specifically and not emotions, because emotions simply color the memories. Inside Out also offers an explanation for why kids specifically are better targets for the monsters. Because as kids, their memories are only colored by a single emotion. But even by the end of the movie, Riley has started to develop a little bit more, and so her memories are starting to be colored by multiple emotions at once, which would obviously be harder to harvest. And it makes sense that of all things, they're using memory as a power source in Pixar, because memory might be the most important aspect of everything. It might be the reason the Pixar theory exists. It's the message they're trying to tell you. In Inside Out, we're introduced to Bing Bong, and his death is quite powerful. Because Riley remembers him as an actual being and not just as a single memory, he is preserved as a being in her mind and not contained into a single orb. And he spends most of the movie in this state as a memory that isn't forgotten, but one that is also never called upon. So instead, he's just allowed to roam freely throughout her mind. Until, of course, he falls victim to the memory dump. And so, not so oddly, this exact phenomenon is the driving force behind the entire plot of Coco, which is why it's surprised then that the City of the Dead looks like a much grander version of the human mind. Because rather than looking at just the single mind of a little girl, now we're looking at the collective memory of the entire country of Mexico. But the rules are pretty much the same. Sure, once a year, if your family puts your picture on the ofrenda, you can cross back over and accept an offering from them. But either way, as long as a single person remembers you, as long as one memory orb of you exists somewhere in someone's mind, you are allowed to continue living in the land of the dead. But if you are completely forgotten, much like Bing Bong at the end of Inside Out, you then suffer the final death. And this is the point of the Pixar theory, to actively remember those who came before you, to look back as a guide to the future, because those who are not forgotten aren't really gone. And this theme permeates every Pixar franchise. Bob Parr is afraid that if people forget the old ways, then Mr. Incredible will truly die. His true self, then, will really die. In Toy Story, Wheezy is sick because Andy has forgotten him. In Ratatouille, Gusteau's memory is being tarnished and Remy is out to...
Toy Story is all about not being forgotten. I just realized that. Like every movie, Toy Story 1, and he didn't want to get... Woody didn't want to get forgotten by Andy because he's playing with Buzz. Toy Story 2, Jesse the prospector and the horse when Woody found them.
They're all
traumatized because Jesse's traumatized because she was forgotten by her past owner, and Woody helps her find Andy. 3. Can't connect that right now, but 4.
Don't even talk about 4.
Yeah, I love 4 though.
No,
Said it straight.
You don't like 4? What's your rant about 4?
Like, I just thought 3 wrapped everything up, and it felt like 4
4
was a
just
bit
like
of a tap on.
I feel like 4 was a power move, but once the movie came out, it's like, oh, it was good though.
I mean,
I can see when they try to tack on another movie and the movie's not good.
and then like in the third one, Bonnie low-key did kind of
What?
forget about Woody, despite how she
In 4, yeah, she was starting to forget about Woody.
was.
Yeah. My thing is though, Woody is the toy that doesn't want to let go of his owner. You can see that in 3 with Andy.
Yeah.
So he didn't want to let go of Bonnie. That's why when he found
Forky, the fork guy, I think.
No, a little further that when he found Bo Peep again, Bo Peep was trying to convince him to stay and separate.
Right.
Like it wasn't so bad not having an owner because you're everybody's kid.
I get what you mean though.
Yeah.
Can't let Ellie's memory die and carries it around as literal baggage until he finally realizes that instead of remembering her, he needs to live the way she wanted him to live. Dory's whole character is about memory, and she shows us tragically how terrible forgetting can be. I mean, without the ability to remember, she could have swam right up to her parents and not even realized who they were. Arlo is controlled by guilt and memory of his father's death and fears he'll never make him proud until his dad's ghost literally appears to him and says, "You are me and more." The cars, on the other hand, as machines and not humans, are starkly not concerned with legacy. Both Lightning and Doc Hudson both scoff at it. But then there's the adorable little Wally, also a machine, but one who actively cares about remembering humans, and as such, what happens to grow right next to him? A little plant. And remember the brown earth? Well, another explanation might be that all of humanity has literally forgotten Earth. Even the captain has to ask the ship.
Right.
No, they did forget Earth.
But
Yeah, they did.
once he starts to remember,
Well, yeah.
And finally, this brings us all the way back to where we started. Brave.
right,
Inside
Pete,
a little witch's hut where the most important memory of them all lives. An image that has no business existing in medieval Scotland and yet is there all the same. It is a carving of none other than Sully. Because it's not just some random witch. This old lady is Boo. Well, for one, she's obsessed with bears, which Sully resembles, and it might be how you remember him if you only ever saw him as a little girl. 2, she has a carving of the Pizza Planet truck right here, and that's like, what? Cars don't even exist yet. How would she even know what that is if she's not actually from the future? And 3, where did Sully come from when she was a little girl? A magic door. And what does the witch happen to have on her hut? A magic door. But so
that's the best part.
The theory goes that she spends pretty much the rest of her life trying to track down her best friend from the closet, but can never find him.
Because she never found Sully again.
I think she figured it out. She obviously learned about time travel at some point, but for some reason,
so she was at a young age. She probably
Scotland. But my question
is probably portrayed as a dream, but it's still in her memory.
Is again memory, because she never wants Sully to suffer the final death. She never wants him to ever really be forgotten. And how do you fight that? By living in the past and remembering something from the future. Effectively creating a permanent loop. As long as she stays here and ensures the events of Brave happen, she ensures the future. That she will always go on to be a little girl who meets Sully and then grows up trying to find him again and eventually come back to this point. Always keeping the memory alive. And that is the Pixar theory. Then my question for you and everyone else is, what is your favorite Pixar movie?
You go first. I gotta think about it.
Let's see. I said Ratatouille is my favorite.
Ratatouille is my comfort movie. I can watch. I can always go back and watch that.
I used to love watching it when I was young and when it first came out.
Right, same. I don't know what it is like. I want to use the term that movie has crack in it. I'm addicted to watching. I can watch it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I think as kids, like scientifically, they have certain hues and colors and different images in there that capture your attention. I think that's what Ratatouille does because I couldn't get enough of it back when I was that young. But I would say my favorite is between Toy Story 3.
I like Toy Story 2.
Toy Story 2 is good.
I like Toy Story 2.
And Up. It's between those two.
It's been a minute since I've seen Up. But that was, no man, that was
mind blowing, right? Yeah, it just refreshed my memory about a lot of stuff that was connected, man. And they're still more.
They're still doing more. They'll never stop doing Pixar movies.
I don't think they ever will because there's so much you can relate to out of them and get a message out of them. And they just keep making movies, so who knows? We might have an updated Pixar Theory at one point.
Didn't they just do isn't Strange World the Pixar Theory? A Pixar movie?
No, Walt Disney Animation.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, Walt Disney Animation. Yep.
Heard that movie didn't do so good.
Yeah, because I don't know, because they didn't promote it well.
Right.
You didn't see a lot. They had like 2 trailers and a few.
We were gonna, man. Man, this for one has to do a trailer reaction, man. The trailer came out like half a year ago.
And when I wanted to do the trailer, the movie was coming out the next week. Right. I waited too long. But the movie just didn't get that much exposure. They were comparing it to you know the old movie from Disney, I think either called not Treasure Island, Atlantis with the treasure hunters.
I loved Atlantis.
Yeah.
Didn't like the sequel.
There was a sequel to it?
They did a sequel. I did not like the sequel.
Yeah, man. But this video was cool, man. We might take a look at.
We might look at more stuff for this channel, and then we might also react to the more lengthened version of this.
Right. All right. Let us know if you want us to do that, or if you want us to react to more of his videos. We'll link his channel in the description. Right.
But man, that was it, man. That was our reaction to the complete Pixar. I mean, they're the same essentially.
Essentially.
But that was our reaction. Be sure to leave a
comment in the comment. All right, be sure to leave a comment in the comment section of any videos you want us to react to.
We're on the road to 100.
There we go. That's
for people who keep accidentally clicking on our stuff, and I don't know why you're watching it through or skimming it.
Oh Lord.
Don't do that. That's true. That's true though.
Don't do that. You're going to encourage me.
I'm gonna cut that. But that was it, man. This was your boy Tae.
This your boy Ant.
We're Tae N Ant, and we will catch you in the next one.
Peace.